Good morning, grade 9 students, and welcome to our third lesson for English for the first quarter. We're coming there with our exams and all, but don't worry, we're going to get through this together. Okay? Now, our lesson for today is about modals of permission, prohibition, and obligation. And before we go to our lesson, let's have first our goals. What are we aiming for this lesson? Number 1, we're aiming for you to identify modals according to their use. Number 2, you need to use modals appropriately. And number 3, write sentences using the correct modals. Okay. Now, Sir Kevin, unsa dining modals di ay? What are these modals? Okay? Modals are a type of auxiliary or helping verb that is used to express permission, obligation, and prohibition, among others. So if you remember in your grade 7 or grade 8, now what natay giingon nga helping verbs, nagtabang sila sa verbs, okay? And if you are anyway confused, I have another video about verbs sa grade 7. Please check it out in my kanang video nga gallery sa akong channel. Naa dito ang lesson about verbs. Okay, so you can watch it shortly just to refresh you. Okay, but again, modals are type of auxiliary or helping verbs. Okay, so unsa dining mga modals? Okay, modals are different from normal verbs like work, play, visit, and they give additional information about the function of the main verb it follows. Again, because they're helping verbs, tabangan nila ang ilahang mga main verbs, kanang main o kanang verbs yun nga naagid sa sentence that helps a sentence make sense. And they have a great variety of communicative functions. Now, unsa ni characteristics ani modals, Sir Kevin? What are the characteristics? Number 1, modals never change in form. Dili siya nimo pwede mabutangan og s, ed, or ing. Okay? And they are always followed by a bare verb. Okay? Verb ra gyud siya. Dili pud ang iyang gisundan nga verb kay dili pud kanang naay s, kanang ed or ing. Okay? So remember, ang modals gani basta naa gani modals, dili ang iyang main verb dili mabutangan og ed, es ug ing. And they are used to express certainty, possibility, willingness, obligation, necessity, and ability. But today we're only going to talk about 3. Okay? Tulo ra ka usage of modals. So we have the permission, we have the prohibition, and we have the obligation. So let's get started. Now, our first lesson, our first modal that we're going to talk about is the modals of permission. And the modals of permission are the words can, may, and could. Now we are going to analyze each and every word. Okay? Now, can is used to ask for or give permission. So, mangayo ka og something or mangayo ka og permission. Or to give, you ask for permission, mangayo kag permission, or hatagan nimo sila og permission. Ikaw mo hatag sa permission or ikaw mo dawat sa permission. So, for example here, in our example, can I use your mobile phone? Pwede ba kung makahulam sa imong cellphone? Good. So, mao na siya ang can. Number 2, can I borrow a pen? Pwede ko manghulam og pen. Pwede ba ko mamanghulam og pen? So, that means I am asking permission from you to borrow your pen. And our number 3, you can't sit here. This seat is free. Okay? So, that means you are giving permission to that someone nga, huy, lingkod diri. Kay, libre ni na lingkuranan. Walay naglingkod ani. Okay? Next, we go to our next modal, which is what we call may. Now, may is used to ask or give permission politely. Politely or formally, naay batasan, no? In English pa, sa ato pa binisaya, naay batasan. For example, mayon ka nga, instead nga, ma'am, can I ask a question? Instead of using that, you can say, ma'am, may I ask a question? Because that sounds more polite. Oh, di ba? May I ask a question? Or, yes, you may sit down. you're going to give permission. Yes, you may sit down. Di ba pwede mo, yes, you can sit down. Okay? That's a little bit rude. Okay? Okay, when you may, mura ka ga, okay, sige, lingkod dong. Or lingkod day. So that is what we call our may as a modal of permission. Okay? Next modal of permission again is our could. And could can also be used to ask or give permission politely. Politely. So for example, could I open the windows? Could I open the windows, sir? Or ma'am? Or you could do that suggestion. Pwede na rin mabuhatong na suggestion. So that is our modal of permission. Again, our modals of permission are can, may, and could. Now let's go to our next modals. Okay? Now we go to the modals of prohibition. Pinagbabawal. So unsa ning mga modals of prohibition? We have the can't and the mustn't. Or the must not. The cannot and the must not. Okay? Now let's go to can't. Can't usually gives the idea of something that is against the rules. So mogamit ka nita og can't, mura sig mo against ka og rules. So for example, you can't run in the hallway because there is a rule nga dili gyud dapat mo run sa hallway. So you can't run the hallway because it's a rule. Or for example, Jethro can't go out because he is still a minor. Because na ay rule nga dili makagawas, that means Jethro cannot get outside. So atong gamiton is the can't. Gives the idea of something that is usually against the rules. Okay? So can't. Next, let's go to must not or mustn't. Now mustn't usually means that it is the speaker who is setting the rule. So for example, I am setting the rule. So for example, you must not do that. Kaya ako may nag-set og rule. But if for example, na ay other rule, we use the can't. For example, you can't lie or you can't cheat in this exam. Because that's a rule. But if ako rin nagbuhat sa rule, ang speaker rin may nagbuhat sa rule, may nga ko nga, the students must not turn their cameras off while in class. If ako rin nagbuhat, mga ako ninyo nga, you must not turn your cameras off while in class. Or, for example, you must not court someone if you're still a student. I am setting that rule. You must not court someone if you are still a student. Okay. So, mga na siya ito ang modals of prohibition. Now, let's go to our modals of obligation. And our modals of obligation are divided into two. We have the firm obligation or necessity. Firm. Good siya. Or the recommendation or the moral obligation. So that means you should do it but depende rin ninyo. Okay? So we have here our modal for the firm obligation is the must or the have to. And then for the recommendation or the moral obligation, we have the should and ought to. Now let's go to must. Okay? Must shows that the obligation comes from the speaker. So gikan nako. So for example, I must really call my parents. I must really call your parents, or I must clean up after my mess. So, ang kanang must, kanang obligation gikan sa imuha. Dili sa ubang tao. So manang I must do it. I must clean my room. I must wash the dishes. Okay? Now, if have to gani siya, if have to inyong gamiton for the firm obligation, it comes from someone else and not the speaker. So for example, maana ka nga, ang obligation ako kay kinahanglan ko mo work og Saturdays. So I have to. Really, I must. Kay dili man willing ang speaker nga mo trabaho og Sabado. Dili gani siya ganahan mo trabaho og Sabado. So if he is only forced to, so you can use the have to. Okay? If murasig na force, na pugos, have to ang inyong pwede gamiton. So I have to work on Saturdays, or she has to clean their workspace. Okay? Napugos ka. Because the obligation did not come from you, it came from someone else. Okay? And we also have our recommendation lang. Katong mga recommendation, the should and ought to. And these are more or less synonymous. Parehas sa gini sila og meaning. So, pwede rin mo ma-interchange. So, for example, you should stop smoking or you ought to help those in need. Okay? So, recommendation lang sa'yo, you should stop smoking, you ought to help those in need. It's a moral obligation, but then, depende ninyo kung saan ninyo buhaton. So, mao na ito ang should and ought to. Okay, so that's the end of our lesson, but before we end, let's do a recap first. So, today, we learned about the 3 types of modals, the modals of permission, the modals of prohibition, and the modals of obligation. And we have learned, again, the types of this one. So, for the modals for permission, you learned about the can, and the may, and the could. So, kana sila. Can I get my water? May I get my water? Could I get my water? Mao na siya. Now, let's go to modals of prohibition, which is the can't and mustn't. Okay? For example, I can't go to the party today, or you can't do that. Or for example, I must not do that. Okay? And lastly, we have the modals for obligation. So we divided the 2 modals of obligation. We have the number 1, we have the firm obligation, and number 2, we have the recommendation. Humok siya gamay. And for the modals of obligation, we have the must and the have to. And also, we have the should and the ought to. I hope everything is clear. If you have any questions, please write them in the exit ticket. And if inyo pang time, listen, if inyo pang time, do not worry. You can call me if maglibog mo. You can call me in Messenger anytime. Sir, naglibog ko, unsaon paggamit ani-ana. Okay? But, for your questions, pwede ra po ang exit ticket. But if you really need the help, you can always call me basta within your time. Okay? So from 7:30 to 8:30. Okay? So thank you everyone for listening. I hope you are going to have a good day. Don't forget to answer the exit tickets. Thank you and goodbye.